Hello and welcome to the Tough Crowd. I am J5 Mama J, and I am back after a hiatus. Where have I been? I have been a lot of places, trying to keep track of it. On a somber note, I lost my big dog Leo back in May, and honestly, that threw me for a loop. I lost my mojo for quite a while. I had to have some relatively minor surgery, and then they had to fix part of that minor surgery. Long story, but everything's okay now. But just a lot of stuff going on since the end of April, and didn't really have it in me to get back to the podcast. Again, I sort of lost my mojo, and I'm feeling better now. Everything's good, but still hard to not have him. That's the hardest part. So being in Florida without him, being up here in Connecticut, it's a little bit easier because I don't think of him being here. So, moving on from that, but that's where I've been, and I was on the fence about coming back. When should I come back? And a good friend of mine, shout out to Michelle, said, "When are you doing another podcast? I really like your podcast." So I felt like that was sort of a sign from God that I should get back here. So here I am. And so I'm just going to be a stream of consciousness today, talking about all the things that I've been thinking about, and I'm probably going to leave a lot of stuff out, which I can save for the next time. Connecticut, being back here in Connecticut for the summer. The weather has been spectacular. Really loved it. Or am loving it. We've had a couple of days of heavy rain, but in general, the weather has been fantastic. 75 to 80, dry, slight breeze, sunny. So that's been enjoyable to be able to go out and walk without sweating, and taking the dog for a walk, Louis for a walk here is way more enjoyable. He's not going to burn his paws on the pavement, etc. Seeing all my friends up here has been great. Maisie got to play in a golf tournament up here, which was fun. So some of our friends got to come out and watch. And that's always fun to have somebody else come and walk with you at a golf tournament. The one thing that I'm very disturbed about, that I don't know if it's specific to Connecticut or if it's going on everywhere, and that Florida is slightly immune because of the weather in Florida, and that people are always out doing things. People are always outside year round, obviously, because of the weather, doing things. Plus, the climate there is such that there's so many people moving there. There's so many things to do. Social events are out of control in that you literally could do 5 different things every day if you wanted to. A dinner, trivia night, music trivia, late night dance party, afternoon dance party, friends friends having parties. There's so many people moving there that a lot of people are new, and everybody is looking for a new friend, which is really not as much the case in Connecticut. Everybody's friendly, but it's, a lot of people have lived here their whole lives. I lived in Connecticut until I moved to Florida my whole life. So, except for college. And so, some of my friends I've had for 30, 40 years, 50 years, sort of crazy. And down there, everybody's new in general. I know 2 people that are native Floridians that are friends of mine. Other than that, everybody's from somewhere else. So I think that's the difference. Up here, I feel like, yes, people like to get out in the nice weather. It's great. But there's some sense of, in the downtown area and other areas that I see people, say like 40 and under, who have only worked from home or work from home pretty much all of the time, haven't had the same experiences I've had of being in an office, getting up and getting dressed. And a lot of people seem to live their life up here just like they've given up. They look like they're still in the pandemic. And yes, I'm sure there's people that are struggling with different things. I totally understand that. But I'm saying the general population that you see around in the workforce, or not, it may be in the workforce going to an office, or around town navigating their life. And I feel like everybody's very segregated in that respect, in that people are sort of on their own much of the time. They're working from home, they're doing things in a very sequestered manner. And I just don't think it's a good thing. I know it's really great to work from home, and I've worked from home forever, so I'm the last one to criticize that. But I think if you haven't had the opportunity to work in an office and develop those relationships and learn how to deal with different personalities, I think you're missing out. And I think there's a lot of people here that seem to be in that boat. I just have that sense. And I think that makes it such that people judge each other more harshly in that respect, because they aren't out and about being with people as much. Yes, I'm sure they're with their friends on the weekend, but if you're really sequestered and not dealing with people, it's easy to be mad at somebody at work when they're just a face on a screen versus a guy or a gal that's next to you in the office, and you know that they had a hard day the day before because they came in and they're not feeling great. Whatever it is, it makes you more sympathetic. So I think that that's a component of society now, is that everybody's so sequestered into their own lives that maybe they're not as empathetic to other people as they could be. So I think that there's a group of people that don't know what they're missing out on. And I'm not saying they have to go back into an office. I'm just observing that I think that's a component of where all the mean-spiritedness comes on social media. Because I think that people are not surrounded by different viewpoints enough, and therefore you're not as likely to be nice to somebody online. You might make a comment because, well, if you know somebody that you deal with every day that has that same opinion, maybe you don't agree with them, but at least you can tolerate it. And I think when you're sequestered, you can't really tolerate it. That's just my sort of take on it. And I think people of my generation had the experience of being in an office, having to be there at a certain time, having to look a certain way, having to deal with all the different personalities in the office. The older guy that would ask you if you had a boyfriend, how is your boyfriend? Which you would never ask a younger person now. You would never say, hey, how is your boyfriend? Some of the things that we had go on in the office that you had to deal with, somebody wanted to come in and get information on somebody else, and they wanted you to be part of their cabal to take out somebody else in the office. And somebody's talking about this other person in a nasty manner or making comments about the other person. You have to decide how to navigate that and get along with your superiors. And I think that's a skill that you don't have to have when you're online. Or maybe it's harder when you're online, because if somebody just decides they don't like you, don't want you, it's easy to fire somebody if you're only a face on the screen. So I just think this is sort of an epidemic in general, probably around the country. And a lot of people in the 20-something, 30-something-year-old age group are missing out. And I think it's pushing everybody into their political factions, their tribes, as it were, more so than if everybody was out and about mixing it up every day. That being said, I'm not going into the office every day. I go in, once or twice a week. And I find it interesting, and it always changes my perspective on certain people, certain situations. I think it helps people collaborate and work better together. So that is my take on that. I just think people need to get together more and put their best foot forward versus sort of giving up and resorting to barely better than airport pajama wear around. And I'm not saying it has to be expensive clothing. Just look like you have some zhuzh to you. Like you want to be successful. And they always, the old cliche was dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. Doesn't have to be expensive clothing, expensive shoes. Just put yourself together and make yourself look like you care, and people will think you care about your job more, and I think you'll get more respect. I think when somebody comes up, dressed to work in Jethro cut-off ragged jeans when you're 50 to 60 years old and dirty sneakers and a top that has the shoulders cut out, I think you're going nowhere. I think you've lost the plot. Again, my opinion. But as I always say, you shouldn't have asked then. Not that you asked, but you're here, so you asked a little bit. The one thing I was dealing with commonly between Florida and Connecticut, ironically, was a cake issue. Now, I'm not sure what's going on in the cake making industry, but perhaps you want to consider getting into it if you're into baking, because it seems to be a very, scarce industry. I don't think that's the right word. There are a lot of cake makers, bakeries, but they think that they are letting you into the gold reserve by letting you even talk to them about ordering a cake. So this cake industry seems to be somewhat of a secret society, I've determined, both in Connecticut and in Florida. So my foray into the cake industry is limited. I've only had the experience of the wedding cakes for Natalie 4 years ago and Emma this past January. Those wedding cakes were included, quote unquote, in the zillions of dollars that we paid for the wedding. But that being the case, the cake maker is beholden to the venue because obviously they make all the cakes for all the weddings at the venue. They want to do a good job, so they're still persnickety in that you have to schedule a tasting at some weird time way in advance, and it's booked up forever, very difficult to do. I think for Emma's, we just picked up the cake samples because we couldn't even make it work. So that's my experience with cakes. Didn't really think about it. I've been to places where somebody has like a Publix birthday cake. You order those today and you get it tomorrow. So one of my friends was having a 50th birthday party for another friend, surprise. So I say, well, I have a vision of this cake. I'd love to bring a cake. I'll deal with the cake. Well, that was easier said than done, which I guess everything's easier said than done. I sort of hate that expression. So I start calling cake places, and there's a few that I know of just visually I've been by. I call these places. Nobody's calling me back. And then some of them say you have to submit a request via text or via email. Do both. Great. 4 different places. No response. I call them. On the machine, it says, don't leave a message. We only accept requests by text and by email. Now, it's off season there because it's summer. Nobody's really getting married there in the summer. So I don't know if all these people are on vacation because they're tired from the winter, but there is no response to be had. I asked my neighbor And she gives me a couple of places. I email them, I text them, I go online, I submit the request through the portal, Zippo. And we're talking about, $150 plus cake. So not a cheap cake. And this is for 8 people. They make those tall cakes now that are popular, which I think are quite attractive. And that's what I wanted. 6-inch tall, 6-inch wire diameter cake. And decorations. So I get from ChatGPT some suggested decorations. I am getting no bites. So finally, I call my wedding planner from Emma's wedding and Natalie's wedding, ask her. She knows of a woman. I text her. She texts me right back because obviously she's beholden to the wedding planner to recommend her for cakes and wants to. And I'm sure she's a very nice person as well. So she gets right back to me. I send her the pictures. She says, yeah, I'll do a combo of these 2 ideas because my idea was if you were born 50 years ago, it was 1976. So it's a disco theme, which, I mean, count me in for any disco theme, anything, and had this great idea. So she said immediately, I'll do it. This is the price. You can pick it up on the day of the party the day of the party, I could pick it up. And great. So that got resolved. But it was a long time coming. And then when I picked it up, it was the most interesting cake because she had combined these elements that ChatGPT had thrown in there, which was everything but the kitchen sink. So it had little records. It had 1976. It had palm trees. It had disco balls and had beautiful flowers on it. So it was quite interesting, but a little bizarre at the same time. It really had too many themes going, but everybody else loved it. And I have to say the cake was phenomenally delicious. Then in Connecticut, for Maisie's birthday, I wanted to get her a little cake. She was turning 25, special day. Nobody's around, so can't really celebrate except we're going out to dinner. So we wanted to get her a cake. Well, it starts all over again. Nobody's calling me back. You have to submit these things online only. And so I finally get the name of a cake place, I think from Google, and I happened to call and she happened to answer. And it's a cute little cake place in the town next to us. And she has ready-made designs. So I picked one. It was like vintage flowers, beautiful, puts her name on it. Going to pick it up. And she said, I only have a different kind of buttercream. It's not American buttercream, so it's not as sweet, which I thought, okay, that sounds great because sometimes the cake frostings can be too sweet. The cake was beautiful and the cake itself was delicious, the cake part, but the frosting was not to my liking. It was a little bit like silky, Crisco-y, I think. So Maisie doesn't even like frosting, so it was fine to have, and it was about what it looked like in the presentation for her. So that worked out great. The girl was super nice. And so that cake was half the price of the one in Florida, but it didn't have all the doodads on it. So if you saw a picture of this cake from Florida, I think you'd say, wow, that's the most interesting cake I've ever seen. And I think that's what everybody at the party said. So I think you better get into the cake industry because they seem to be a persnickety bunch that feels like they can do whatever, and good luck trying to contact them. Speaking of my Florida trip, so I went down for the birthday party. I had different appointments, hair appointment, nail appointment, all my people, because I still haven't found a nail person up here, though I've pasted it together with my trips to Florida that I haven't been to a nail person up here, but we're going to France at the end of August, and I'm going to need to see a nail person here. Maisie saw somebody and she liked them, but they do the different way of doing your nails. It's like a paint on gel versus the dip powder I have in Florida, and I don't like change. So I'm begrudgingly going to have to go somewhere else. So during my Florida trip, I had a friend who bought a house. So that was fun to go over and see that and help her. and I got to bring and pull out my laser measurer, which is the most phenomenal device that you put against the wall, the corner of it in the corner, and it tells you with the laser beam the length of the room or the height of the room, whatever you want. I mapped out all of her rooms, and that was really fun, and helping her, lay out where her furniture is going to go and just see her happy with her new house. Then we had the birthday party. It was a surprise birthday party, and the ruse for the birthday party was that I was coming back for a visit, which I was a little bit anxious that the birthday girl was going to say, "Why are we having a big party for somebody who's only been gone a month?" Or 6 weeks, sort of funny. And we had 2 different chat groups. One, we could talk about it, and one she was in. And I just really didn't want to communicate in either because I was so petrified I was going to say something. And I didn't talk to her the entire month because I didn't want to allude to the fact of the cake. I didn't want to say anything. So I'm very good at keeping secrets, but sometimes when you have a secret like that, you say something in passing and it gives it away. She had no idea. And it was a fabulous night, great food. We had fun glasses and boas for the 1976 theme, and a disco ball as well. So that was really fun. While I was there, it became clear that we needed to fix the air conditioner on one side of our house. So I talked to the guy at the HVAC company. He can do a warranty repair. We just pay for the labor, and that was, several $1,000s, or we could get a new unit for not that much more. Contract with him to put the new unit in. Long story short, they send 2 gentlemen who were perfectly nice, but they really could not communicate well. So I had somebody else come over from the company to make sure that I understood what was going on. And the new unit, is supposed to be more efficient. Yet it really wasn't getting down to the temperature that I like at night, which is 67. That's how we've always slept. The old unit, even though it was limping along, got to 67 every night within 2 hours. New unit's not doing that. So they say, well, the new unit's more efficient. And I said, Rich, if the new unit is more efficient, why doesn't it work as well as the old unit? I'm not an HVAC person, but I don't know what that means. He's saying, well, efficiency is more energy efficiency. And I said, well, I'm the customer and I need it to operate as well as the old one. Otherwise, why did I just spend $12,000? So I'm trying to make Rich understand this. Rich is pointing out, well, you have some heat areas in your attic where the insulation is loose and the ductwork has a couple of holes in it. And I said, well, all of that was true before you put the new unit in. And the old unit worked the way I wanted, and the new unit doesn't. So that's the problem. And I have a 10-year warranty with you, and I am not going to be happy for 10 years if you don't fix it. So I think Rich and I have come to an understanding that I am not going to be happy until he fixes it. He gets what I'm saying. And the other annoying part about these guys is every time they send somebody out, the guy that's standing in front of you says, well, I don't know about the guy that was here before. This is the first time I've been here. And I said, if one more person says that to me, I'm going to lose it because it's not my problem how you run your business. Get a manager out here. I don't know why all this stuff is being pointed out now and that you're going to start to pick on my ductwork when you put a new unit in, disconnected the ductwork from the old unit, put the new unit in, connected the new ductwork, and then you're like, ugh, the ductwork's not great. I'm sorry, I don't know what kind of business model that is. So Rich is putting some sensors there to figure out if he can balance it. And I said, well, you're either going to fix this one or you're going to rip this one out and put a new one in because I am not going to be hot for any period of time, and definitely not 10 years. I was talking to my law partner about it, and he said, "Oh, there's nothing worse than a hot woman," which is sort of true. You don't want to see me if I've been hot all night while I was sleeping. It's really not. And Maisie, probably even worse. Bobby can attest that the room next to ours is like an icebox. And Justin, when he's there, sleeps in a ski cap and socks because it's so cold. Which is very funny now when I think about it. So maybe Rich can figure out how to redistribute the air to save himself, but Rich and I have a problem. And I think I'm the bad cop in the situation, and Andy's going to be the good cop, which honestly, he took their word as soon as they said, "Oh, it's the ductwork," and he went on. And I said, "What do you mean you just took that? I'm going to call them." And he's like, "Oh, you have to be nice." I was like, "I'm not being not nice, but I'm standing up for the fact that we just paid $12,000 for something that doesn't work as well as the old unit that was costing us $0." So I am leaving that as is, and hopefully Rich can get his sensors out there and fix what's going on. I then was supposed to leave on a Monday. I get up Monday and JetBlue says, flight canceled. No weather, nothing. So I look, at least JetBlue canceled it before I went to the airport, because JetBlue is infamous for waiting until you just get through TSA, put your purse back on, and it says flight canceled, flight delayed. I can't tell you how many times I've picked Emma up from the airport. I've left her there, and then 2 hours later, 3 hours later, something's happened and I have to pick her up. This time I went in and it says, "These are your options." Click on my options, and it gives me, this is Monday at 6 a.m. This is Monday at 5:30 a.m. I forget what time I got up. My flight was at 8, I think. And they give me options. My only option they're giving me is Wednesday afternoon, leaving Fort Lauderdale, 2 stops to Connecticut. Who wants that flight? What are we talking about? I had a direct flight from Palm Beach to Hartford. So now I'm panicking because there's no other flights, and those are my options. Meanwhile, Andy goes on and says, well, there's a flight on Wednesday, the one you're on now, on JetBlue from Palm Beach. So I go in, I change it as if, they hadn't canceled my flight. Like whenever you change a flight, lets me change it. Fine, but it still has that weird options thing. Your flight's been canceled, even though the new flight's showing for that Wednesday. So I'm slightly suspicious. Make the best of it. Get a couple extra days with my friends. Get a couple extra appointments in. Fine. I don't segue well because I was already packed. I had the house closed up. I was ready to go. And then I had to, switch courses, which I don't do well. Like if we're going out for Chinese food and the Chinese place is closed and we have to go to Italian, no bueno. No bueno for me. I would have a hard time wrapping my head around that. So I did make the best of this, but it was a hard transition to pivot that fast. So then it comes to Tuesday night. I'm out with my friends. I go to check in for my flight Wednesday. It's not letting me check in. It keeps giving this error code. So then I'm panicking. I'm not really on the flight. I didn't really change it. And going through that whole process, try to call them. Well, forget it, because obviously they've canceled so many flights. Their telephone center is beyond repair. And I almost texted my friend that works for JetBlue. She works at the Palm Beach airport for JetBlue. But I was like, I can't bother her. She's not at work. She's not going to be able to tell me anything. So I'm just going to live on the edge and get up the next day. Still won't let me check in. I get there. I'm checking a bag, much to Andy's disdain that you have to check a bag, because that is just loserville and the filler mentality. If you're checking a bag, you've basically given up on life. If you're checking a bag, because you're better than that, you should be able to stuff it all in one bag. But because of my surgery, I can't lift anything heavy. So that was my reason. And he had to accept that. And I'm at the back of the line, and my friend is over the desk. She sees me and she's like, "Oh, miss, come over here, please." So she takes me in the, I don't know, platinum line, whatever it is, mint line, mosaic, whatever it is for JetBlue, and takes me over there. And I was like, "Oh my God, Sue, thank God you're here." I'm panicked about my flight. And she said, "No, that when they cancel a flight and you rebook it, there's some TSA hookup or Homeland Security hookup that causes a problem, and they have to override it. And that's why." So she checked my bag, gave me a nice old tag for it, took it away, got my boarding pass. So I was totally relieved because I was waiting for a fight over this flight. And I wanted to be home because Maisie was in a golf tournament Thursday. I wanted to get back here. So that was my JetBlue experience. Once you're on the plane, the flight attendants and the planes are great, but their app, their website, and some of their protocols about canceling flights, just no good. I've had so many different issues with them. The next thing that I've been obsessed with is all the true crime stuff. And, Karen Reed goes on and on. There's now different civil trials going on. Turtle Boy, who's a podcaster, YouTuber, who really brought her case to the forefront of national news, is being sued by who they call the House defendants, all the people that were in the house where John O'Keefe's body was found and acted very suspiciously, and I think are up to no good. In my opinion, the way they acted is very suspicious. And so the state policeman Michael Proctor, who we've all heard about, his texts from the cloud were discovered back to 2013, and they have phone calls, texts between him. There's another Canton police officer and Sergeant Good, which is ironic, the name. And the things that they talk about are absolutely disgusting, hair-raising. You can't even make them up. So look it up if you want to look it up. I'm not going to get into all the wording is so grotesque and disgusting that you can't even believe it. How he talks about his wife, how the guy talks about his girlfriend, how they talk about them to each other, how they talk about Black people, Asians, Jews, women. I mean, anybody you can think of, they are a non-discriminatory racist, both of them. So she is suing them, the Massachusetts State Police and the Canton Police Department. There's just a pattern of behavior, and you can't tell me they didn't know about these guys. I'm sorry. If somebody is saying something so egregious, somebody else knows about it. I've worked with people that are few and far between obnoxious like that, and everybody knows them. Everybody knows about it. So they just chose not to do anything about it. So I think that there are going to be a lot of cases overturned because of this. If you were a Black defendant or in any of these groups that he was biased against, how do you know he did his investigation? How do you know he talked about planting evidence in these texts, setting people up to get them convicted? So how do you know that he didn't do that to you? So I think the state of Massachusetts and the town of Canton are really going to get screwed by this. And probably rightly so, because they let it go on. The corruption that appears to have been going on there is crazy. So I think she's going to get a big verdict against them. And then I think all these other people are going to get convictions overturned, some of whom probably are guilty. But that's their own fault for leaving these people in charge of investigations when they knew somebody above them knew about these shenanigans. So that's going on. The Lindsay Clancy trial is going on up in the same area. That is such a distressing trial that even though I find the the legal concept's interesting. I had to turn it off. I can't watch it. It is a woman who is a labor and delivery nurse, and I don't remember what her husband did. And they have 3 kids, 2 older kids, like 5, 3, and then a baby. And after she has the baby, she has postpartum depression. And it develops into what they call postpartum psychosis. And they're trying to get her on different meds, and then some of the meds wouldn't work, so they'd go on another med, or she'd have a side effect from one, so they'd give her a medication for the side effect. So the list of medications she's on is shocking. She was also committed to a facility for a period of time, and the husband was worried about her and thought she was getting better. Cut to the chase. I think it was 4 years ago. Maybe almost 4 years ago. She sends him out to get takeout. She's been doing normal mom things all day, and he's stopping to get a prescription for one of the kids. And while he's gone, she kills all 3 children. I'm not going to even get into it. If you want to look at it, go on. There's plenty of people covering it. But it's too gruesome for me to get into. And then she cuts her wrists, stabs herself, jumps out of the 2nd floor window, and she's now paralyzed in a wheelchair. So she is arrested for killing her children. One of them lives long enough to go to the hospital where it's the baby, and the baby dies. The husband, the poor guy, can you imagine the trauma? He has since remarried, and she's on trial for murder. She's claiming insanity because of all of these drugs. And this list of drugs is, again, shocking. So I can believe that somebody's not of their right mind and doesn't know right from wrong, which is the standard in Massachusetts, if you were on this cocktail of drugs. And there's no other information that they've introduced thus far that says, oh, she had been going out to bars and she met different boyfriends that she wanted to leave her husband for, and she wanted to get rid of the kids. There was no other information that said she had anything but love for her children, but these voices were telling her to kill the kids, which is, something that's reported in this type of psychosis. He's divorced her. He's since remarried. He was called as the first prosecution witness, and you can tell that he is sympathetic to her case. He's on her side. They were trying to paint him in some ways as having not done enough, and then her as being a bad mother or overreaching because she had very specific instructions for the nanny. I think this prosecutor, who's a female, is coming off horribly. In my opinion, she's grating. The way she speaks is grating. And the way she browbeat the husband, the ex-husband, I thought was unacceptable. I just don't think you look good in front of the jury, the way she was speaking. So far, I'm giving her negative marks. And maybe they have some evidence that she had... just because you plan something doesn't mean you're not crazy. That's my opinion. And I think they have 10 women on the jury, and I think that they're going to understand that too. I think men don't understand how that can feel, and they haven't shown any other motive for her doing this. The last true crime is Nolan Wells, who is a young black man in Mississippi. He was found dead on this island off the coast of Mississippi called Horn Island. I think it's like 10 miles around. So it's a huge island where boats go out. There's nothing on the island, totally deserted island. And boats go out, anchor, and party. There's places like this in Florida. And so this place is huge. And the video that I've seen has, hundreds of boats and probably over 1,000 people in the water, just a sea of bodies on the boats, in the waters, on the edge of the island. And this was July 4th. He went out with several of his friends. I believe he had some black friends, some white friends, but the people he went on this boat with were all white, I believe. They come back without him. He decides not to go on their boat, and they can't find him. They don't know what happened to him. They don't know whose boat he was on or not on. They call his mom because they have his phone. He left his phone on the boat. They call the Coast Guard. They find his body and face down on the shore. So the initial autopsy doesn't show anything specifically. They haven't got the toxicology yet. So it's turned into a racial issue because this attorney Ben Crump and Al Sharpton have taken up, and the original story that was put out there was that he went out in this boat to this deserted island with these 3 white boys, that they left him there dead and took his phone and erased thing on his phone. So that's not really what happened at all. These other boys supposedly, there's been lots of information, came back because their boat was taking on water. They came back more like at 4:30, and he was seen still there at 6:00. And they have video of him, I think, or somebody, a witness was reported saying these boys said, "Nolan, get on the boat, get on the boat, get on the boat." He would not get on the boat. He was sitting with some girl, and then they left around 4:30. At 6:00 or later than that, he was seen on the island still with all these other people because it was July 4th. People were hanging out late. So now the latest information is Officer Tatum, who has a YouTube show and happens to be black. So he is catching a lot of grief from the black community because they think that he's on the white boys' side. But he interviewed these boys, and it seems clear from all the evidence that they came back way before anything happened to him because people saw Nolan alive and well. There's since been some other information about other people that there were drugs involved. There might have been a fight. Nobody's names have been released. And Crump and Sharpton had a second autopsy done, which was inconclusive because they didn't have all the body parts that the original coroner kept for investigation. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to me that somebody could fall, hit their head in the water with all those people around and nobody would notice. That doesn't make any sense. So did something happen? Did somebody dump him there? And it also doesn't seem logical that all those boats would slowly leave and leave somebody on the island. That doesn't make any sense. And he'd been out there a lot of times. He knew how to handle himself, so he would know he had to get on a boat to get home. He wasn't going to stay on the island. There's nothing on the island. So there's lots of political, there's a political firestorm over this at this point. And I think that I don't blame the parents for wanting an investigation, but I think they're being led astray by Al Sharpton and Ben Crump, who are going out sort of half-cocked on this and comparing it to other things that have happened in Mississippi. And I don't think they have information yet that that was the case. And I'm not saying it's not the case, but I think these initial boys that they fingered don't seem to have anything to do with it. There's video of them leaving, and there's evidence they were on shore at 4:30 to 5:00. So that's yet to be determined. Just a so sad story. I mean, such a sad story. He looked like just like a wonderful person, great smile. Everybody seemed to love him. So I'm hoping that gets resolved for the family because it's just tragic. The final thing is other nonsense going on. I have watched The Hawk with Will Ferrell on Netflix. Now I did not want to watch it. We started it the other night and I was like, oh, it's going to be stupid because I love Will Ferrell, but some of his things end up being really stupid and I'm annoyed. And I thought this was going to be annoying because the Hawk's about a golfer who's down on his luck, trying to make a comeback. His son's also a pro golfer, and his old antagonist that beat him when he dropped out of golf and went down to the lower tour um, is in the show. So it just seemed like a bunch of caricatures and probably like a bad Happy Gilmore. I am pleasantly surprised. I actually like it a lot. I think the plot is interesting and I think that they have some great characters. They have the woman who's a chubbier, blonde, curly-haired comedian, and I'm trying to remember her name. She's awesome. And she is his caddy who doesn't know anything about caddying. Let me see who is in it that we. Oh, Fortune Feimster. And I saw her on Jeff Lewis's decorating show with her wife, and she was hysterical with Jeff Lewis, who's very acerbic decorator guy on TV and really is like blunt with people. And she was hysterical and I really like her. She was also in Fubar. So I think she's really good in this. She has a lot of different nuances, not just I'm gonna be the funny large girl in the show. And then her son or his son, Will Ferrell's son, Jimmy Tatro, I've never seen him before, but he does a good job of playing the son of another professional golfer. And Molly Shannon is his still wife, but they're estranged. And she does a really good job. I think she's hysterical. And you know what? Go Molly. She wears all these boobsy dresses and doesn't care how old she is. And she looks good. So I like it. She's rocking it. And Luke Wilson is his, arch nemesis golfer, and his name is Golden Fisk, which is such a great golfer name, right? Molly Shannon is 61 years old. So she's exactly my age. But I find her really funny. So I actually really like the show. So give it a watch. And it's short episodes. And we're on the last episode we're going to watch tonight. The other show that I loved was 5-Star Weekend. I thought it was going to be, I don't really like these all women type, women have it harder kind of series. Like that book, The Red Tent, I think it was. Oh my God. I know a lot of people love that book and I'm very sorry if you did, but I found it just exhausting. So I was hoping this wasn't going to be a Nantucket version of that, and it's not. Jennifer Garner's in it. And who else is in it? Jennifer Garner. Oh, Chloe Sevigny, and I love her in it. She is my favorite character by far. Literally love everything about her. I love how she dresses, how she acts, how she talks, everything about her. Let's see who else. There's another. Regina Hall is one of her friends. Judy Greer is sort of like a nemesis. And then Darcy Carden, who I'm not familiar with, but I loved her character too. She's like sort of the one that doesn't feel like she fits in and gets invited, and she's sort of shocked she's invited. And it just gives you all the nuances of being in a group of women. And these are all people that Jennifer Garner invites for a weekend that are from different eras of her life. Her husband's been dead for a year. He was killed suddenly. There's lots of twists and turns, but I think it really is good. And I loved it. I loved the scenery. And because the author of the book, who is, I think it's Ellen Hildebrand, isn't it? I think so. Yeah, Ellen Hildebrand. or Elin Hildebrand is the author. And because she has a house on Nantucket, they let her film it there. Normally, you can't film there. So the cinematography is beautiful. It's just gorgeous. Like you just want to go on vacation there. So that is my recommendation for, those are my two recommendations for shows that I'm really into now. And then the last one I'm watching is the new evidence in the Scott Peterson case, who supposedly killed his wife and unborn baby back in 1997, 98, 99, around that time. And I'm sorry. Don't understand how somebody acts like he did after the case, after the murder, after her body was found, and says, "Oh no, it wasn't me." I just don't buy it. But maybe I'll be surprised by what happens in the new show, and it's on Hulu. So I'll be watching that to catch up on that. And that is it for now. So I'm glad to catch up with everybody and hope you're enjoying your summer so far. And we'll be back soon. See ya.